Right then, everybody, good evening and welcome to another live stream. So first of all, hope this finds you in fine fettle as we start a new week. And we've got a load of stuff we're going to talk about in the next 60 minutes. So I see some of you folks seem to join this stream, I don't know, God knows, at least almost 2 hours before myself and Rebecca joined it. But anyway, regardless of when you join, you're all very welcome. Thanks for being here, because without you, this would not be, there'd be no point to this. As you join in your numbers as well, I just want to say a couple of things before we kick off. Hi, Dan. Nice to see you on the stream as well. First thing is that, we can now stream. I'm now permitted, thanks to the gods of Facebook, to stream again to Facebook. So if you're watching this on Facebook, share it on Facebook and any other places you're able to do so. Facebook isn't my friend, but I am back on it, so that's something to be said. The other thing I want to say is this before I bring on our special Monday guest as normal, and it's this, that alt news media exists to provide you folks with civilized opinions presented in a sensible way, and talking about the topics that some of which you don't necessarily get on the legacy lamestream media. That's what we exist for, and we exist with your help. So before we get into this discussion or these discussions tonight, I do want you to think about making a small contribution to the channel if you want to see the channel basically be in a position whereby it can prosper. And underneath, as I speak to you with incredible good timing, up comes the little link. If you want to drop a few pounds in the hat at this season of goodwill, go to altnewsmedia.net/donate, and that keeps things going. So it's really down to you folks if you want things to keep going. Hope you do. Some of you do, by the way. Not all of you do. Those who don't know who you are, and you know what you have to do. Right. Having said all that, here she is, our Monday night guest, as always, and we're very appreciative of her. It's Rebecca Butler. Good evening, Rebecca.
Hi, David. Hi, everybody. Nice to see the stream up and running already, and hope we can have lots of chat this evening. Really looking forward to it.
Yeah, well, Rebecca, we've got loads actually to talk through, and also we will be joined by our also very special guest, Jed. 52% of Jed, apparently. I don't know where the other 48% is, but anyway, Jed's going to be joining us as well. We've got three really juicy topics to get to talk about, and as I say, sometimes I think that there's certain big issues, Rebecca, as you know, that dominate almost the entire news cycle. Brexit, you can't really get away from it. COVID, you can't really get away from it. But tonight, I'm doing my best to try and just widen the discussion a bit to things that I think a lot of people care about as well. And I think for me, there's one thing that I'm very passionate about all of these, but one in particular. I want to start off with the Vicar of Dibley. I want to talk about the new woke Vicar of Dibley, who's joined the parish, aka Dawn French. I want to chat about that. I want to open it then into the broader Millwall, Black Lives Matter, taking in the issue, which, I know you're a big football fan, so no better person to have on the channel. I'm interested to hear your thoughts on it. So we're going to talk about that. Then we're going to talk, Rebecca, you put a tweet up a couple of days ago. I dug it out, and it's really to do with the big drive, for the UK to cut emissions by 68% by 2030, which isn't that far away. So I thought you put up a really interesting tweet about that. So we're going to talk about that. And then, because you can't avoid it, we're going to talk about Brexit, because even as we speak on air, Boris and the lovely Ursula are thrashing out a deal, maybe not. I don't know. But anyway, so that's the agenda, folks. So I hope you'll find this interesting. It's really quite a varied set of topics. So I wanted to start off with, if I can, Rebecca, I wanted to bring up the Vicar of Dibley to start with. Now, before I get into this, I don't know about you, but I really enjoyed the series of this. It was kind of what the BBC did best for a while. It was kind of relatively mild-mannered, set in a very Middle English little village, with the female vicar had come in, so that was a bit rebellious, but it was all very pleasant humor, and it had moments of poignancy in it and moments of good humor, and it was a jolly series, I thought, anyway. And I have big fan of Dawn French here, by the way. Went to see her and Jennifer Saunders at the Reading Hexagon about 100 years ago, back when they were two young things and they were on the comedy set going around. And so I'm a big fan of Dawn French and Jennifer Saunders, and big fan of the Vicar of Dibley. So you can imagine my joy when I read, oh, Dawn French dismisses criticism of the Vicar of Dibley's forthcoming Black Lives Matter scene, in which she takes the knee. And the article goes on to say that apparently Miss French has dismissed the criticism of it, or appeared to anyway. And apparently in the program, Rebecca, in one of the Christmas programs, she gives a sermon to the parishioners of her little English village about the importance of Black Lives Matters and how it's what Jesus would have wanted. So before I start into it, what's your top line on it? Where do you stand on the vicar taking an A?
Well, I think they've just lost 17.4 million viewers, haven't they, in that particular program? I mean, how is this message about BLM being a political movement, a political party, how is it lost on the BBC, on footballers? How can they not see it? I mean, either this was filmed so long ago that is marginally forgivable, but not really. You know, talk about hashtag defund the BBC. I mean, how to get more signatures on the petition. This is just so wrong. I actually have nothing to even discuss here. No, it's so awful.
Yeah, to me, it's the BBC, the woke BBC of 2020, taking a series that was very much loved and very popular, I think, by a cross section of British society, and just making it toxic, because you know, it's so dissonant with the realities of the actual plot. I mean, I'm not sure where Dibley is exactly, but I'll tell you where it's not. It's not in blooming Toxteth, or it's not, you know, in Tower Hamlets. It's a little quiet. Maybe. I mean, I know it doesn't exist in real life, but it was an echo of ye olde England, and it was nice.
It was sort of meant to be a sort of a take up of half Yes Minister. You know, and half, you know, something written by Ben Elton's, you know, that's something in the black genre. How is a political statement comedy? It's comedy. Shut up, go away. We don't want your crap, when all we want at Christmas this year is to watch something funny. It's been such an awful year.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Go away. I'm not watching it. I'm not watching that crap. No. They're not going to force me their bullshit. Sorry, David. I hope you don't get banned for that.
No, but that's okay. No, but that's what it is. And I'm actually, Rebecca, you make a really good point. After what we've had in 2020, half an hour or whatever, I think it's only maybe a 10 or 15 minute episode, a little bit of escapism would have been really quite nice. But they can't let it go. And you say, as you point out as well, the BBC know, I believe the BBC know precisely what they're doing. They're pushing the endless BLM a narrative, which, you know, to my mind is it's just such a shame. But it's what we expect from the BBC. You summed it up well, Rebecca. It's further reason to defund the BBC. And to my mind, the sooner it's defunded, the better. But that was kind of half the story. But then the other thing that came about in the past couple of days, which you know about, is obviously this one here. So the Millwall fans were booing as the players took the knee. Wayne Rooney, that intellectual giant, apparently Wayne's unhappy that the fans were doing this. And I saw John Barnes, another very famous footballer, telling them to just shut up. If you don't like it, shut up. I wonder, do you think were the Millwall fans right to boo what they saw as, I think, ostentatious kneeling till a political cause, or should they have taken John Barnes' advice and shut up? What do you think?
When we discussed this before, I said that the respect agenda in sport had done a huge amount to combat racism. And, if you say watch in a Euro or even a World Cup competition, the British fans are so much more tolerant than, say, the Russians, for example, or the Ukrainian fans. And so I think we've done a huge amount to combat racism. It was awful. But this isn't combating racism in football. So shut up, Wayne Rooney. Shut up, John Barnes. We did all warn you that the minute you open the terraces, you're going to find out what the real public think. Your paying public do not want political statements on pitch. If they're not allowed to wear poppies for Remembrance Day, they're not allowed to kneel for a political movement. I don't care it's Black Lives Matter. It's a political movement. Don't kneel for it. You're an idiot.
Yeah, I think that's
the police when your wag's diamonds are being nicked. You're going to be calling the police, but you knelt down for a movement that calls to defund the people at the end of the 999 call.
That's right, yeah. And the other thing is, like, the Millwall fans have been demonized for this, but I've read what they've put out and what they've said about it, and they're fully on board with the respect agenda and all of that. Their issue is precisely what you've spelled out, Rebecca. They're very unhappy about their players taking a knee to what they see rightfully as a political organization, as an organization which tried to tear down our statues, which defaced the war memorial in the Cenotaph in Whitehall. That's what they were protesting about. That's what they were booing. And your other point's a really great one, Rebecca, because all along, lots of us have said, just wait till you let the fans back in. The virtue signaling, Sky and BBC and all, they can virtue signal all they want in empty stadiums. Let the ordinary people in and they'll tell you what they think. I think I'm right in saying that although Millwall's got all the attention, I believe there was booing at, I think it was West Ham as well. Did you see that?
Yeah, I mean, I actually put that up, and some people have pushed me back and said rubbish, but I heard it on Match of the Day, and they edited it out on Match of the Day. So the people who push back at me at Twitter, suddenly there are a lot of West Ham fans. I don't believe it because I heard it. But more interestingly, much more interestingly, in terms of the intellectual capacity of the teams themselves, bearing in mind that I cannot think of a single English team in any of the leagues that isn't predominantly black and isn't minority white, because football is a meritocracy. And if we're good enough, you get the millions to play the game. Thank you very much. Off you go to the bank and you can entertain us for 90 minutes twice a week. Thank you. That is our transaction with football players. Look at the French-English rugby match. The French stood, 6 of the English players knelt down, and 7 stood. So rugby, slightly different dynamic. Obviously, we didn't hear a crowd response, not in the same way we did at Millwall. But very different. The French team stood up, and good for them. Very good for them. The French have been under attack. They're not a racist country. They just have a different view to us. And they've obviously thought, well, knickers, we're just not kneeling for an organization that thinks burning buildings and war memorials is the right thing to do. So good on the French. Good for them. Vive la République.
Yeah, absolutely. I saw that as well. Let me introduce into the conversation one of the keenest people who has ever been on the stream, and by that I mean hashtag no deal, hashtag diff on the BBC, otherwise known as Jed. Jed, you're very welcome to the stream. Can you hear us okay?
I can. Good evening, David and Rebecca. Thanks for having me on, David.
You're very welcome. So I hope you caught what we were chatting about, namely the Millwall fans, the booing to the taking of the knee. And I wondered what did you make of it all, Jed? Did you agree with what Rebecca's been saying?
Absolutely. You see, I have to put up with it. I'm not a football fan. I'm an F1 fan. And I think we will have exactly the same thing when the fans en masse are allowed back in to watch the F1, because obviously they do the kneeling. Well, out of the 20 drivers, 13 of them kneel, 7 of them stand. But they still have the anti-racism display at the beginning of each race. I don't watch my sport for politics. I watch it for sports. I don't care what people's politics are. I want the best at this and the best at that, and just to have a great sport. It's not part of the sport, and it shouldn't be. It's a political message.
Yeah, I think, but Jed, that's a key point, isn't it, Rebecca? That we want to watch sport to enjoy sport. I don't want to hear any political message. I mean, never mind keeping racism out of sport. Keep bloody politics out of sport.
Well, it's the Vicar of Dibley. I'm not watching that for a political message. If you started having, a Tory MP in there talking about, the budgetary decisions of the parliamentary group on something or the other, people would be absolutely outraged. Or you had a Labour something happen, or a Lib Dem, or a Greenie, or whatever. Or they mentioned Brexit, you would quite rightly say, go stuff yourself. I'm here for a bit of a laugh. Give me a break. I don't pay for this. Now, football, you pay a hell of a lot of money if you're a season ticket holder. But fortunately, I mean, David, I'm sure you haven't been to many football terraces in your life, but I have. I've spent a lot of my Saturdays.
How dare you?
What a reprobate you are, Rebecca.
I'm a Holstead girl, I know we haven't got many Villa fans here, but I'm also a Northern fan for the Southampton fans. So, the terraces, you're talking big money for anybody to pay for, season tickets. Why should you pay a season ticket for somebody who's just doing this blatant token behavior? It just sticks in people's throats. But it's this sort of reductionist argument. If you don't agree with it, you're a racist. No, I'm not.
Yeah.
I just don't want it in a football match or on the Vicar of Dibley. I'm not racist. Go stop yourself.
But sorry, Jed, just to come in on that. Jed, have you been to football? Have you been on the terraces? Because Rebecca has been on many terraces, apparently.
I think the last time I was on, I was perhaps in single digits of age. So only a few years ago. Yeah. But all today, it's been the fact that, the players are allowed to express their opinion. Well, equally, the Millwall fans are allowed to express their opinion too. Yeah. And that is what they're now calling racist. No, if you want to express your opinion, then allow the fans to do exactly the same. And that shows you the contradiction that they have, the hypocrisy.
Well, actually, Rebecca, because I know you're a big Villa fan, and I presume you've followed Villa for a long time. And Villa is a football team that's got a significant number of black players, as indeed of many other teams. But it's a feature of I think of Aston Villa. And in your experience, has there been overt racism directed at the way of the players, or how does that operate actually? In the stadiums?
Well, if you go back, say, let's go back to the not so ancient history. Just go back to the 1980s. There was a very nasty bit of thuggery. But frankly, this was the time when the SPG existed in Birmingham. And of course, places like Birmingham, West Bromwich, this Midland industrial towns, they had a lot of black people. And I am just talking black people here. I am talking West Indian, Windrushy black people. There are a lot of them congregated in Birmingham. Therefore, the first teams to start seeing black players, like people like Mark Waters, Cyril Regis, players like that, were the Midland teams. So, certainly Aston Villa had one, then two, then three, then four. Really good, Kids coming up see somebody their colour playing and think, oh, well, I can do that as well. Who would ever complain about that? Yes, there was racism. There is no doubt about that. I know there was. But we sorted it out in football. We sorted it out. The fans sorted it out as much as the police and the football clubs. We all worked together to get rid of the very bad elements in football because they were thugs. There was a huge amount of thuggery. Yeah, we got rid of it. And yes, people used to throw bananas. Never at Cyril, always at Cyril Regis, but never at Mark
Regis.
You wouldn't throw a banana at your own team. Don't be ridiculous. You'd only throw it at the opposing team. So, they were racist. But the minute, someone like Mark Waters came on, they'd all be cheering for him. So, yes, it was racist. Let's not pretend it wasn't. But it isn't anymore. It isn't.
I think, Jed, there's another thing in this that bothers me. And it's you see, we're talking about racism, which is in, beyond doubt, it's just an evil. But it's kind of it's always been there. Unfortunately, it's just like it's a bad side of human nature, and for all we might want to regret it, some people will always be racist, I suppose. But what I find is that I actually think, and I'm not sure if you'll agree with me, I think Black Lives Matter by definition is racist because if you oppose racism, then you've got to oppose racism against all lives and all skin colors. And I don't think we should even be talking about skin colors. But, what about people of brown skin colors? Do their lives not matter? What about people of yellow skin colors? Some of whom play in the Premier League. Do their lives not matter, Jed? Don't you think the focus on Black lives itself is problematical?
Of course it is, because, again, you're identifying a group of people by the colour of their skin. And
which is racism.
And I find it bizarre that when we're still having this conversation, Rebecca's right. They had kick out racism or whatever it was in football, which was doing a great job at getting rid of the fans that were racist. You will always find a racist somewhere. Guarantee it. In a crowd of people, there will be a racist within that crowd. But to say everything is, because this is what they do, everything is systematically racist, and therefore we have to have this movement. You don't have to have that movement by the definition of that movement. And it showed it when the Rochdale guy or Burnley lad flew White Lives Matter. Instantly he was a racist. Well, hang on. If it's not about race, Black Lives Matter, then why is the White Lives Matter so racist? It's about all, and it's that good old saying, isn't it? All lives matter. And they do equally. In equal amounts, and they did until very recently matter in equal amounts. No, they don't. If you are black, your life is more than anybody else's, and if you're white, you're right down at the bottom. There's a whole loads of shades between black and white, but the white's down at the bottom because you are racist by nature.
Yeah, which is strange because football is a sport, Rebecca, which I guess the following in the UK is pretty much overwhelmingly it's white people go into it, isn't it? I mean, by and large, I would imagine it's representative of the population, roughly.
Probably not. Probably disproportionate against whites. But this is not about football. None of this is about football. No. And none of this is about racism in football, because then you'd be saying, well, the Vicar of Dibley is about racism in the BBC, and we know there is no greater woke organisation going. So it's not about racism in the sport. I mean,
Yeah.
apart from Lewis Hamilton, how many black Formula One drivers are there who would have had the ability and the money and the privilege to be able to be there in the first place? Not very many.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Nope.
I mean, one of the issues is we need to forget looking at England. I think, right, when I go to India, I'm an expatriate. I go there, I'm born there. Am I expected to be appropriately represented on Indian television, drama, sport? No, absolutely not. I don't expect it. And I'm meant to have white privilege, but I do not expect to impose myself on India. If I go to Australia or Japan or wherever it is, Singapore, it's well, sorry, but you're here. And you're not going to see the same as you everywhere because you've come here and we're a Chinese country, we're an Indian country, whatever. So in a way, yes, there has been a historical problem. Yes, the police were institutionally racist. Absolutely they were, no doubt about it. Yes, there has been racism. Is it a problem today in Britain? No.
No, it's strange. We actually invent problems. They find solutions for things that aren't problems. Isn't that what a word?
That's right,
what a word.
That's right. Yeah, they find problems where there isn't problems.
Yeah, and then full solutions to them. Right. Well, okay. Moving on. The next thing I wanted, Rebecca, I'm setting this one up for you because I saw you tweet this. I'm gonna just stick up your tweet because Jed, you can join in this one as well. Here's a certain Rebecca Butler sort of subtweeting Boris. This was Boris back a few days ago, telling us that we've set a new target to cut emissions by at least 68% by 2030. The fight against climate change is a global challenge. I wonder, did Carrie actually write that one for him, Rebecca? And you then sort of came in with the to the point quote, for if they're going to do that, half of all cars must be electric, and invest now in the green revolution, buy stocks in cobalt and lithium mines and child slavery outfits in the Democratic Republic of Congo. I thought it was a pretty pithy tweet, and it makes a lot of points. And I know you have sent me some slides which I can put up for you, Rebecca. If you want to sort of just let's start with it. Let's start at the top. So in terms of what Boris is saying, do you think it is in any way possible? And if it's not, why is he saying it?
Well, there's a huge amount of intellectual dishonesty over this because, first of all, remember Theresa May, remember her, the robot we had as a prime minister who was a complete failure? Like a lot of them, she wanted a legacy. So she left us with a legacy that was effectively a block of concrete around our ankles and threw us into a river. And she sunk us because her legacy legislation was net carbon neutral by 2050. Now, net is such an important word because the vast majority of the net carbon can be achieved by carbon trading. So just as an example, you could drive a carbon-free car, an electric car, a battery-powered car, only the car isn't battery-powered, it's electricity-powered.
Yep.
So electricity requires coal to be burnt somewhere, doesn't it? So while it achieves clean air within a city centre, which in itself is laudable, it doesn't actually reduce the amount of fossil fuels you use necessarily. It can do, I'll come on to that, but somewhere, someone is burning a bit of fossil fuel to get the electricity into the car. So drive the car is a transaction between fossil fuel and electricity. Now, cut out the middleman of the electricity, and that's what we're doing now. You just imposed a middleman in the picture. Now, burning fossil fuels produces water and carbon dioxide. That's what it does. Carbon dioxide is recyclable. That's great. The trees suck it up, the ground sucks it up, the water, the oceans suck it up, goes back into the earth, and then in, you know, 1 million, 2, 3, 4, 10 million years time, somebody will use our fossil fuels from today, created by forests, so on and so forth. It's the ultimate recycling project. Burning fossil fuels is. Lithium and cobalt are not recyclable. They are not recyclable.
Well, we're going to talk about that in a second. I have to say, Rebecca, I'm very much a first adopter kind of person. So I love new technology. So, for example, I got myself a new car in the summer, and it is hybrid. So it's part electric and it's part traditional fuel, and it's quite cool insofar as, yes, I have to plug it. I plug in to charge up the battery, which we'll talk about, the cobalt batteries and all that, lithium batteries. But I charge that in. That electric is coming. It's coming from somewhere, you know. It's coming from this place where all electric comes from, which is pretty big power stations. So I find, and so I'm not doing it for virtue signaling. I like it because driving on electric, it's really quiet. When I'm in electric mode, I can navigate through city centres really peacefully and quiet, which is quite nice. But yeah. So what about Jed? Can I ask what do you reckon to electric cars?
Well, I have a hybrid as well, David, but I don't have to plug mine in. However, there's a couple of points that Rebecca brought up. Well, firstly, she mentioned carbon, or Rebecca mentioned carbon going around. It is a cycle. We cannot produce any more carbon. So whether we burn it as petrol, as diesel, as coal, or wood, it doesn't matter. There is no more carbon on this planet than there already is. It's just that cycle that, like Rebecca said, we burn it, it's released into the atmosphere, ends up in the oceans, or it ends up in the plants die, and it's regenerated. It is the perfect reusable energy. But the other point of that was the batteries, the battery technology. Now, I've gone into this battery technology, and I wrote an article for you on electric cars a few months ago, David, if you remember. I do indeed, yeah. Now, I only did it to try and cut costs down of my fuel bill, because the job I do, I travel the country all the time, and I was just trying to cut some costs. If diesel hadn't been phased out by my manufacturer, I would have still gone with a diesel, but that was not an option, so I had to go hybrid. But I just want people to understand, if you go electric, if you take let's say a continental journey, which is what's in my article I did for you, David, of let's say 700-ish, 750 miles, in your standard car today, it will take you about 12 hours with perhaps one fuel stop. That's a diesel-ish type car. It'll take you 3 days in an electric car because of the charge times. Yeah. Unless you buy something like a Tesla, with a fast charge, it will take you 3 days to do the same journey.
Which is not remotely practical. In fact, Rebecca, as someone who I know you occasionally do quite long journeys in the car. I mean, it's okay if you're able to drive for 7, 8, 9, 10 hours, that's fine. But if that same journey became one of a couple of days, what the heck what does that do for travel?
Look, if anybody wants to see what reducing people's ability to drive and access fossil fuels through driving, all you need to see is last March's oil price and how many people were put into poverty. And I'm talking about pension funds, individual investors, when the oil price collapsed. The economy is reliant on oil. It's so reliant on the oil price. In fact, if you look at the volatility of oil, you can pretty much predict what's going to happen on the national indices. It is a part of our economy. We need to do it. Now, we do need to make city centres cleaner. We do need to stop dirty carbon dioxide production, because soot. And soot actually doesn't recycle in the way that Jed and I have described the gas carbon dioxide recycles. So yeah, we need to reduce the soot, but my God, look how much we have reduced the filth in our post-industrial age city centres. So again, have we got a problem in Britain? No, we have not got a problem in Britain. Have we got a problem in Europe? No, we have not got a problem in Europe. Germany, the big leaders in the green world, they are building and commissioning coal-fired power stations because you can't build steel. You can't make steel without coal. It is an essential part of the manufacturing process of steel to have coal. So,
well, that's yep. You're right. You're right, Rebecca. But going back to your original tweet, I think that there was a really good. Just bear with me a second. There was a really good. I thought there was a killer punch in what you said in terms of the batteries that are in these cars, and where they come from and what it means. So, Rebecca, I've got some slides that you sent me, and I'm going to put them up, and maybe you can talk us through. If we take a couple of minutes just chat through them. So I'll just put one up at a time. So this was the first slide that you sent me. If everyone can see it, okay. It's kind of looking at top line numbers in terms of cobalt. So just talk us through this as we go through them.
So one of the intrinsic parts of batteries is cobalt. It's not only lithium. And cobalt is mined in the traditional sense of mining, which is underground mining. There are huge deposits across China, and people who followed me will know that I have been banging on about how China is buying up all of the mining rights across swathes of Africa. And what they're doing is they're putting billions into the hands of incredibly corrupt African presidents and governments. None of it's filtering down to the people. And the cobalt mines in the DRC are terrible, because if you just flick that screen up again, the numbers that you have to really look about here.
Yeah.
The 200,000, that is the number of what are called informal copper and cobalt miners in the DRC. So companies like Glencore, all the really big Chinese mining companies are in the DRC. And you can see that 70% of the global production of cobalt, which then gets refined in China, comes from Congo. So Congo is so essential to cobalt mining. Now, I've just written some numbers down here. The 70% of the world's supply is the DRC. And they've got this lovely little name for it. You see this 200,000, you just flicked it up on that other screen. So if you want to take across to that, 30%, you see this on the left, portion of DRC that came from artisanal miners. What a lovely word that is. It makes them sound like they're making pottery and painting, doesn't it?
Yeah.
What an artisanal miner is somebody who hasn't got the benefit of being Chinese and working in a Chinese mine, and hasn't got the benefit of having a job, but they may be the local villagers whose village has been decimated by the cobalt mine. No money filters down from the Chinese money. So these are subsistence, would have been farmers, but now they and their family are going in to mines as day workers. So they're called artisans, but they're not. They're desperate. And many of them are children. So 200,000 families, that includes children, are working on the cobalt mines. Absolutely.
Which is kind of shocking. That I hadn't picked up on that word, artisan, which is incredible, actually, abusive language, isn't it? Because it's essentially child slaves, for want of a better word. And I assume these mines must be pretty dangerous, as most things are underground.
Oh, yeah. I mean, people die in these mines. You know, life is cheap to the Chinese and to the Africans. I'm sorry. it really is cheap, because if one dies, there'll just be another one waiting in the queue to come tomorrow. It's not going to cause a health and safety executive panic. And they're not going to be shutting things down if, mines collapse and people die. But interestingly, the most recent deaths in the DRC are actually the Glencore, which is a Western mining company. But they had artisanal, miners as well. So, here's the list of the companies extracting. This is from the I think it's from the FT. I got this. So you can see the dark blue are the Chinese, and then the blue are all the others. So you have Swiss Mining, have Glencore and Shalina and Vinmart. So you've got about 4 multinationals, and then the vast majority, as you can see, just the amount of dark blue there compared with everybody else. The single biggest country to refine cobalt is China, but China drives the world economy for batteries. Now, you've moved across to lithium.
Okay,
Lithium is the other big chemical. Now, with cobalt and lithium, cobalt, you're looking at a fairly heavy metal, so the refining process is quite significant. Lithium is the lightest metal on the metals table, on the periodic table, and so lithium will always form a salt effectively, because it's got the free electrons going around. So quite an unstable element as a metal on its own. And what they do is they pump it up from underground underground sort of sumps of this sludgy stuff, and then they bring it up to the surface onto effectively salt pans and dry it out. Stuff. So it's a bit like a salt pan. The problem is,
is this, Rebecca? Is that kind of what it looks like?
Yeah, that's it. You see, they've pumped it up onto the surface, and then that will probably take 12 months to dry out. And now that's lithium carbonate. That salt is. That's what you're looking at there. But there are 2 issues here, and one of them, we must never, ever, ever let go of the sight of the big problems with fresh water supplies globally. I think water wars will be 100 years from today. Water is a major problem. And these mines, these individual mines, require 55,000 litres of water per day to effectively float this stuff up out of the underground slurry pits. So fresh water's pumped in, and then it comes up to the surface. Problems with poisoning, again, lithium, very poisonous substance. And fish supplies have been completely decimated in certain watercourses. And this is Bolivia, which is a Marxist country, not known for its human rights, not known for its absence of corruption. And Bolivia has 17% of global brine lithium. So that's the stuff you bring up as lithium carbonate. The other mines around the world that were in that infographic, those are the resources worldwide, and you see places like the US, Chile, China's actually Mongolia is where most of the lithium is, but you can see the big one, Bolivia, big one,
Bolivia. But as you say, Marxist Bolivia and communist, so Chile and then China. Yeah, it's interesting that, isn't it? Yeah.
So if you bring up the I think it might be the last one now. Thank you. So this shows you what the forecast for electrical vehicles is going to be by 2030. Okay. That's huge. That's that looks like a virus. That's got a hell of an R rate, hasn't it? That one. That looks like a virus. That's got a huge exponential rise. Now, there is enough lithium on the planet to feed that. Okay, so there's no shortage of lithium that we can get our hands on. I mean, even Cornwall has lithium. That is not the issue. The issue is the environmental disaster that we are storing up when the 10-year cycle is over, because currently the EU has very poor regulations on recycling of lithium batteries, very poor. And so you should have to be forced to recycle properly that battery. Your Tesla battery, even your hybrid battery has got a life which is much shorter than just a plain old diesel or petrol car. These cars do not have long lives.
But Rebecca, the thing about this, and Jed, I'll bring you in a second, but the thing about this that's kind of jaw-dropping is that what's being proposed by Boris and other countries around the world, for that matter, in this kind of rush to embrace this technology for cars in particular, they're doing it in the name of the environment. And everything you've just said, Rebecca, in terms of both cobalt and in terms of lithium, is destructive of the environment. So, I mean, Jill, I'll just bring you in on that. I mean, what's your reaction to the fact that, to save the environment, we're going to destroy the environment?
Yeah, well, we are. You see, no, David, you've got it wrong. We're saving the environment. You're not supposed to see those mines and those salt lakes. You don't see it. No, they're not there. Shh, don't say anything. Oh, and the additional coal-powered fire. Good grief. Coal-fired power stations that we're going to need to charge all these vehicles. You're not supposed to see them. Them are hidden environmentals. This is only a way of making the rest of us, the normal folk of this world, poor, because that's all it will do, is make us poor.
And how are you going to pay for this, right? Because at the moment, we pay 65% of our fuel is tax. It's customs duty. So how is the government going to recoup that lost revenue? How? It is such a sizable sum of money. And it's not just electrification of cars, which is more expensive. They've got to find millions of heat pumps, domestic heat pumps, and I mean millions. Now, if you go out and buy a boiler, £2,000, and you expect it to last 20 years, now you have to go and buy an air source heat pump, which is £7,500, which, by the way, brought the Northern Ireland Assembly down. But that's another story.
Oh, yeah, that's another story, yeah.
But so they're completely pie in the sky, and what it does is it makes people look in even more parochial than they are, because we are simply shifting the dirty carbon somewhere else on the planet. It's making, Winchester such a lovely, pretty city centre, in London, oh, isn't it beautiful and quiet, and all these cyclists, lying dead because they can't hear the electric cars coming up behind them. There is a danger element here as well.
There is, there is, Rebecca. As I say, as someone who drives one, one of the first things I became super conscious of was the fact that because it's so quiet, it is a potential danger to children and to pedestrians. You've got to be very careful if you're in a very smooth electric vehicle. But Rebecca, I'll ask you and then I'll turn to you, Jed. But surely to goodness, those who advise Boris Johnson and all the rest of them, they must know what you've just said, Rebecca. They must be aware of the data and the issues around lithium, around cobalt, around the cost of it and how's it going to work. and yet they can't seem. I mean, they're gagging to get us into our electric cars, and why is that, Rebecca? Do you think?
I honestly, how many hours have we got here for me to rant? The IPCC, right, the body that tells us that we're all going to die, and in floods or storms or the waters are rising, and the thing with the IPCC is that it is overpopulated with weather scientists, not climate scientists. And there is a huge difference because, of course, we see weather fluctuations. Of course we do. We had an ice age 10,000 years ago. The Thames froze 100 years ago.
Yeah,
We've
150
ice ages in the interglacial period. We're in an interglacial period at the moment.
We are.
The thing is, it's people like Princess Nutnuts who are graduates in theatre studies who think they understand climate, when if I said to them, explain the carbon cycle to me then, go on, tell me about the carbon cycle, they wouldn't know what the hell I was talking about. They said weather. They don't give a flying flamingo, as to Jed's point, which is this is going to cost us more, because their attitude is good. It's meant to cost more, because if it costs more, you won't use it. And if you don't use it, you'll use all those lovely red buses. And then you say, well, hang on a minute, I don't live in London. I live in Hampshire. There aren't buses in Hampshire. What are you talking about? Well, get on your bike. What if I'm 80? How can I get on a bike if I'm 80? Well, what's your mother going to do 2030? Well, it could be me, actually. My kids should be saying this. Mum, what are you going to do? You're going to have to buy a brand new car, which is going to cost you an arm and a leg, and then you're going to pop your clogs. So you just wouldn't do it. I'd just buy a pretty little petrol thing, when I get there. But so they don't care about the economics. They don't care. The Princess Nutnuts of this world glaze over.
Well, Jed, would you agree? I mean, I suspect we're all in agreement in this one, but because one of the other things, Jed, from my point of view, is on the practicalities. Even if you take everything that Rebecca said and said, doesn't matter, put it to one side. Practical basis, recharging your electric car. How is that one going to work, Jed, in inner cities where there's loads of tower blocks and there's not enough? I mean, given that the way that I think a fast charge an electric car is a couple of hours. I know my car takes probably overnight to give me a full charge. In what way is this practical? And if it's not practical, again, to go back to Rebecca, why is it being talked about?
Well, it's not practical, and it's not designed to be practical, because it's designed, and I think Rebecca there, that a little bit cynically about, your mum will have to catch the bus or get a bike. That is the point. It will be so costly to own and charge, and so difficult to charge, that you won't get one. Why will you not get one? Well, you'll now live in a smart city where you'll pop in a driverless car for the 15 mile to work or whatever it might be, or down to the shops. And then we know where you've gone, when you've gone, where did you go, absolutely everything. That's the point. Get you into a smart city. Stop you driving from Birmingham to London and from Glasgow to Manchester. We don't want you to do that. We want you to, if you're born in Glasgow, we want you to stay in Glasgow and never leave. And we can do that by pricing you out of transport. Whatever city, but we're pricing you out of the transport market completely. I wouldn't want to stay in Glasgow, but no offense to Scots.
Yeah, spoiler alert, if you're watching this from Glasgow, I disavow what I actually said. There you go. Hey, listen, we're drawing near the end of the hour. So
David, can I just say something? I think Kim Urswell, before she goes off the stream, You know, Kim, you're asking one of us to take one for the team on this with Boris. She said if only he'd start his next affair with a Conservative who influences him to get us back to a real normal. Yeah, I mean, Princess Nutnut's got into his head, hasn't she? It's
maybe more than his head, Rebecca. But yeah,
his head actually,
so.
From what I hear. Anyway, yeah. Hi, Rob. Nice to see you. But it's. Yeah. Honestly, it's carbon trading. 38% of when they talk about net carbon neutral is actually what they call the green energy. So if you bill your energy as a local authority, say through a green energy supplier, then they effectively cut their net carbon use by 38%. I've pointed this out with my local authority and said, you've just, thank you, Penny. You know, it's just a dishonesty because if there isn't a windy day and you've covered every last field of our green and pleasant land in those beautiful solar panels, which I'm sure everybody prefers looking at rather than grass and trees, what then? So
exactly. Well,
it's nonsense.
Well, you do say what then, and of course, I didn't want to let this one finished without bringing you the breaking news, as in an hour ago anyway. And essentially, it's the same. Boris is going to meet Ursula to save the trade deal. I'll just go through this one quickly. So I mean, I'll tell you where I'm at on this one. I couldn't care less about their trade deal. Stuff the trade deal. I don't even want a trade deal anymore. I've had it up to here with the EU in particular. The way this, this 1 minute to midnight brinkmanship that they just seem to, sort of marinate themselves in. It sickens me to the point where, as someone who obviously I'm a business person, I do business across the EU. It would be good for there to be a deal. But at this point, I honestly couldn't give a stuff. Rebecca?
Well, it's interesting that the EU refers to the British fishing fleet as artisan fishing fleet. That's why I kind of picked up on the artisan miners, because bizarrely, the cod and flatfish in the Channel prefer England. They don't go near the French side of the Channel. So we have all the sort of the high value fish there. Good, yes. But France gets 58% of it. So the thing is, you have to look at this. Fishing is even less of the GDP of France than it is of Britain. But because they're relying on people like Austria, the Czechs, all of those Eastern Europeans who wouldn't know a boat if they saw one, Macron is playing chaos politics here because because he's become an authoritarian Marxist, COVID's given him a boost. So he's obviously thinking, I'm going to the polls next year. I'm going to show that I am actually with the Gilets jaunes. I am with the working man. So because he's so in touch with the working man, he sent somebody else to go on a boat in the freezing cold Boulogne-sur-Mer. And he's made fishing such a big thing. But didn't everybody tell us fishing wasn't a big thing? Didn't all the Remainers say, fishing, it's nothing? Well, suddenly it really is a really big thing. And the French are asking far too much. I understand the French side, because how can you buy a £1 million trawler if you don't know what you're going to be able to think in 3 years' time? I kind of get that argument.
Yeah. But that's reasonable. Yeah.
Nobody was saying that when our fishermen were going on the doles. So there is a little bit of revenge for the dish best served cold, which is happening right now. This isn't the big issue. It's the level playing field they're fighting over. That is what they're fighting over. And you know what? We could end up with no deal because of that, because under no circumstances, that sovereignty, the level.
It is. Well, you're absolutely right, Rebecca. You were on a stream with me on a different channel about a week or so ago, and we talked a lot about this whole the whole fishing issue. And one of the things that you said then, which I thought was really interesting, was that whilst France is sort of playing the chaos politics, there's other countries, like I think you mentioned Spain, if I remember rightly, Spain, and I think Holland, and as being nations which also have a significant impact. It's I've never heard it talked about. You were the first person that's spoken about it, I think, in a public forum, and yet it's a critical aspect to it, isn't it?
Yeah, oh, absolutely it is. And, you know, I kind of hate to say this because it does seem as though I am not as sympathetic as I am. So please don't misread me here. But, you know, 2/3 of our fishing boats are owned by people all in the Times rich list. And the biggest trawlers for the pelagic fleets, which are out in the Atlantic, so, you know, the slightly deeper fish, they're all owned by Dutch companies. So when you see a picture of a Dutch super trawler, it's quite likely a UK registered company from Holland because they registered in Britain. So actually, it's not the English artisan fishermen that you're defending either. It's actually big super trawlers that are British companies, but actually they're Dutch owned. A lot of them.
Jed, tell me this, Jed. Will you be heartbroken if there's a no deal, or do you think that we're gonna, or do you think at 1 minute to midnight, you know, 31st of December, or something like that, or maybe 31st of or the 24 hours time? Do you think they'll clinch some sort of a deal? What do you reckon?
I've got a gut feeling that we're going to be sold down the river, and I mean literally the river. Because I think the problem with fishing is the European Union, and particularly France, think they have a right to those waters. They seem to misunderstand that they are our waters, legally, internationally, they are our waters. And for the past 40 years, we've allowed them to take over our waters. All we're now doing is saying, no, these are ours. But I'm telling you now, I've got a feeling that Boris and von der Leyen are going to do a deal, and he's going to sell us down the river. And Farage will have to come and save the day at the local elections and the next general election. My prediction.
Well, that's an interesting prediction, Jed. I think it's one of these things. As I say, from my point of view, I'm sick of it. I'm bored senseless with also the other thing that bothers me is the false drama that the media construct. You know, the breathless reports from Brussels and from outside Downing Street with the journalists who, by the way, always talk as if they're employed by the European Union. They never talk about things from a British point of view, which drives me mad about the media. But then I already have been driven beyond the point of sanity.
What they don't say is the French position is ludicrous. Because that's so right, Harry. Because it's a ludicrous position because if Macron pushes us to no deal, they get less. We've actually offered them more than a WTO on fish. They can't hold us to ransom on the Northern Irish Protocol because fishing is excluded from that. So Macron was talking out of his hat when he threatened that, and then we brought in the internal market bill and broke international law, you know, all that rubbish. That's nonsense. Macron didn't understand the fundamental relationship between fishing and the Northern Ireland Protocol. It doesn't happen. 20 of the EU states do not fish. He's got a problem. He can't hold the whole of Europe, the German car manufacturing industry. They don't fish. They don't fish in our waters. They fish in the Baltic. They're not concerned. The Austrians, could they give a damn? Of course not. But they want to export to Britain without a tariff. So there's no reason for us not to hold firm and say, fine, you want that? Go. You're having your WTO deal, mate. And there's a line straight down the middle of the channel, and you cannot cross it under international law. You can't cross that.
So Rebecca, just to put you on the spot, so do you think in the next week, do you think there will be a compromise deal, or do you think there's will there not?
Actually, what I think now, because they've been in this this sort of vacuum for a whole year. They have not moved on these three fundamental things. They can move on the ECJ. There's no reason at all not to move on that. That's a back pocket job. Fishing, well, we hold the cards on fishing because of what I just said. Level playing field, do you know what I think could happen? And the more I think about it, the more I think this is going to happen. I think it will be no agreement on that. We've left the EU anyway. This is just a trade deal. We have left the EU. So are we going to achieve a full trade deal by January the 1st? Actually, in my heart of hearts, I think not. But I don't see this as a disaster. We've got mini deals already. We have already got enshrined in law deals on movement of people, visa travel, movement of animals, movement of the Euratom, all the nuclear isotopes, they've all been agreed. The air travel's been agreed, pet passports have been agreed. So many things have already been agreed that we will just proceed on that basis. And then why do we need to rush into this anymore? Stuff them. If they want to lose their very expensive German cars to Chrysler Motors, who would love to sell us their cars at 15% cheaper, fine.
And it has been reported that apparently German car manufacturers have been whispering in Merkel's shell-like that she needs to get on and get a deal, because come January 1, Mercedes, BMW, Audi, they do not want to have their biggest export market compromised, regardless of European unity. So it's an interesting one. Listen, folks, unfortunately, as is always our way in these discussions, they go way too quickly. But nonetheless, I want to, first of all, thank my special guest, Rebecca. Thanks for being here, Rebecca. Jed, thanks for being with us as well. Appreciate your presence, Jed. Thanks everybody. Thanks everybody on the stream for all your comments, funny and serious. Appreciate them all. And suffice to say that I shall return later in the week. But for now, again, many thanks for all your support. And remember what I said at the beginning: if you're not providing a little financial contribution to this channel, you're freeloading off the channel. So you know what to do. That's it for me. Bye, everybody.